Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Folks, it's August 18th, 2025. There is an interview of Tyson Fury going around. It's in Sports Illustrated. Ring Magazine has picked up the theme of the interview. Right in it, Tyson Fury, who's only lost to one man, Alexander Usyk, who he wants to fight a third time. And truth be told, the first fight was a split decision loss. It's one of the closest fights that Usyk has faced. Right? In the interview, Tyson Fury flatly says that there is one fighter out there who will beat Alexander Usyk. And of course, he names the hot fighter of the day, Moses Itauma. Now, let me say this diplomatically, right? All of us need to have our own filters. Not all information is credible information. The Clarence have agendas, right? What is Tyson Fury's dream fight? Folks, I'm telling you, it's a third fight against a guy who he feels he beat twice. Let's remember the second fight, a fight the world thought he lost by 2 rounds. Tyson Fury felt that he won the fight. Look at when they announced the judges' scorecards. Fury, a lot of experience, right? Here's the cards. You see the look on his face. He is firmly believing that they're going to announce, and the new heavyweight champion, Tyson Fury. You see it on the film. Look at the end of that Usyk Fury rematch. Look at when the cards are being announced. Fury thought he outboxed Usyk. Right? So, I'll just put it to you this way. In my opinion, Fury has an agenda. Right? We're here comparing Usyk to a guy who, has fought Marius Wack and Dillian White. From this seat, White's probably the best opponent that Moses Itauma fought. And Itauma was fortunate in catching White in the first round. He's fortunate that White on the canvas felt a need to get off the canvas without taking the full 8. So when he stumbles in the corner, the referee calls the fight. Right, folks? Just imagine how much less luster Usyk would have if, at the end of the 6th round of the first fight against Tyson Fury, the referee jumped in and said, no, that's it. No more. This is only a 6-round fight. Just imagine if, Usyk had been undisputed at cruiser and never made it past the 6th round. Think about all of the action in just the first fight against Tyson Fury. Think about the level of opposition, which is bigger than Moses Itauma has faced in a real fight. Right? Just think of all the action that happened after the 6th round in that first Usyk Fury match. Right, folks? Moses Itauma has never been past the 6th round. I know Itauma is caught up in the moment. Just imagine being 20 years old. Just imagine the world is buzzing. They're telling you you're a paradigm shift. Right? You're, at events and Mike Tyson is there. Right? There was talk of you beating Tyson's record as youngest heavyweight champion. Right? What do you know? You've been knocking guys down. Right? But folks, let's be smarter. Usyk today, with vastly more experience, against guys like Murat Gassiev, Maris Breedis, Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, Tyson Fury, Derek Chisora. Right? Let's ask the question. Has Moses Itauma fought anyone as good as Derek Chisora? You have to think for a bit, don't you? Tony Bellew. Just understand, against that level of opposition today, Alexander Usyk has as many losses as Moses Itauma does. And I would say members of Itauma's own family would have to concede that Usyk has vastly more experience. I'm not talking about sparring. I'm talking about in actual fights. Let me point out, too, that we know who Usyk has fought in actual fights. We recognize that in the amateurs, he fought people like Arthur Beterbiev, who himself has had a distinguished pro career. We understand in the amateurs, Usyk won an Olympic gold medal. Right? We also understand that with all the names on Usyk's professional record, in private, he's been in the ring with people like Martin Bakole. Right? So I would argue that when we use the phrase the championship rounds, we're not talking about rounds 1 to 3. Right? We're talking about, 10, 11, and 12, aren't we? Only one of these fighters, Usyk, Itauma, only one of these fighters has experience in the championship rounds. That's Alexander Usyk. Right? Only one of these fighters has fought multiple guys who have held the heavyweight title. Right? Wasn't that Joshua at one point with the title? Wasn't that Fury with the title? By the way, Joshua and Fury each held the title for years. Right? Wasn't that Daniel Dubois, the guy who they gave the title to when they stripped Usyk? Usyk's beaten him twice. Right? So folks, understand what you have here, in my eyes, and I'm just giving you my opinion, is an ex-champion, Tyson Fury, who needs to find a way to get a third fight against Alexander Usyk. Right? So, of course, he's coming out, he's saying, hey, man, Itauma beats Usyk. Then, of course, if they schedule that fight, which would be unfortunate because to me, you have rankings for a reason. We've been watching fights like Kabayel against Zhili Zhang, like Joe Parker against Martin Bakole for a reason. Those men have distinguished themselves. Right? Those guys are the guys who should be next in line to fight Alexander Usyk. But I believe Tyson Fury has a method to his madness. Right? He's saying, oh, Itauma, he's going to clean out Alexander Usyk. Right? And you have a portion of the public who likes to believe in new paradigms. Right? So, we just saw Itauma look great against Dillian Whyte. Right? The feeling is that Whyte's washed up. Right? Whyte, a guy who, went more rounds against Anthony Joshua, against Tyson Fury, than he did here. White, a guy who's around the same age as Alexander Usyk. White, a guy who went the distance with Joe Parker and beat him. A guy who went the distance with an unbeaten Jermaine Franklin and beat him. Right? We're supposed to believe that White suddenly is too old to be competitive, that if he fought Itauma 5 times, he would be stopped in the first round 5 times. You know, apparently in each fight he would get off the canvas without taking the full 8 count. We're supposed to believe that Itauma is so much better than White that necessarily means that he has a chance against Alexander Usyk. That Usyk, who has never lost, forget then stopped, he's never lost. That Itauma has the secret that nobody else has, and that he's going to stop Usyk because Lord knows in that match, if a boxing match breaks out, we know that Usyk is a master boxer over a period of 12 rounds. We know that because he's had 12-round fights against elite competition. With Itauma, folks, forget the fact that he hasn't made it past 6 rounds. Right? Most of Itauma's fights have ended by early stoppage. We have no idea whether he can sustain superior boxing against an elite opponent for, several rounds in a row. Right? Let me say this too. If the two guys fought today, and I know there's a group out there that feels that, I have an axe to grind with every new, young, promising fighter. Right, folks? I'm just keeping it honest. If you're gambling, you need to ask yourself these questions. If they get to the 7th round, and it's Itauma against Usyk, from the Usyk side of the ledger, there's no panic. How many 7th rounds have you seen Usyk in? Right, there's no panic. You're realizing that Usyk, dropped Fury. I understand that 9th round's dodgy. Let's just say Fury's deemed down in the 9th round, right? You understand Usyk can hurt a guy late in the fight. You get that, right? You understand Usyk's KO of Dubois in their first fight came in the second half of the fight. So you get to the 7th round, you yourself know Usyk, incredible stamina, can go the distance. You're relaxed. You're not panicked. What would be the mood in the Itauma corner? What would be the mood in the sections of the crowd rooting for Moses Itauma? Wouldn't they be saying, wouldn't the commentator on the fight be saying, this is the first time Itauma has gone to the 7th round? Right? Let's go further. Usyk doesn't knock out his opponent in the first 3 rounds. If you're on the Usyk side of the ledger, you're thinking, well, he has 9 more rounds to go. Right? Why 9? Because he's the heavyweight champion. Let's remember that too. Today, as I make this video, he's the heavyweight champion. It's a 12-round fight. Right? Not a 10-round fight. It's a 12-round fight. Right? On the Itauma side of the ledger, you tell me, let's say you bet money on Itauma. At the start of the 4th round, isn't there the distinct possibility that you're going to be privately thinking to yourself, has Itauma's window of opportunity to beat Usyk passed? Wouldn't you be thinking that? Right? If you get to round 7 and Usyk looks like Usyk, in other words, he's bouncing around, he's still, a dominant athlete. He's not cut. He's not bleeding. He's not holding on. He's not staggered. You're not thinking to yourself privately, how did he survive that last round? Let's say at the start of the 7th round, Usyk looks like the Usyk you've always seen. Right, folks? I'm just telling you, if you're on the Itauma side of the ledger, you're going to be panicked. Right, folks? Itauma is a breathtakingly promising athlete. Right? He's certainly done what he needs to show that he's, world class. Certainly he has a big punch. He has fast hands. He has quick feet. He's promising. He's promising. Right? I'll even concede the sport has had some young champions. Right? Not just Tyson, Ali, young guy. Right? You might recall Ali saying, I'm 22 years old and I just shook up the world. Right? When he beat Sonny Liston. Right? Floyd Patterson's a youngster. You've had some young heavyweight champions. Right? But folks, it's still too early right now, isn't it? For Moses Itauma. When Tyson Fury says, oh, Itauma is going to beat him, right? He's going to beat Alexander Usyk. Tyson Fury wasn't knocked down by Usyk early in their fight, right? The 9th round is 3 rounds later than Moses Itauma has ever gone. Right? So let me say, you should have people who you trust, but you should also be skeptical every step of the way. Right? Some heavyweight champ who wants to fight the incumbent is trying to increase the public outcry for the incumbent to fight the young, hot 20-year-old. Right? What a convenient way to have Usyk destroy Itauma. Right? And then to have a public outcry and people say, well, who is the fighter who gave Usyk a tough match to the point where the scoring was by split decision? Right? Guess what? The last guy is Tyson Fury. Right? Think it through. Right? Fury doesn't believe he ever lost to Usyk. The press needs to press him on that. Right? He wants a 3rd fight. He's not interested in other fights. He understands there's always going to be millions of dollars on the table. Right? You're kidding yourself if you don't think Tyson Fury, whatever he says at a racetrack, would gladly come back if he were guaranteed a 3rd fight against Usyk. Right? Usyk's 38. Understand, too, Usyk's a guy who, can pick his opponent. We know the right move would be to fight Joe Parker or Caballero. Right? But understand, it's really the people who pick the champion. Right? So Usyk right now is the consensus heavyweight champion. I understand. In boxing, there's always that Kubrat Pulev crowd that's going to say, hey, our guy has a share of the heavyweight title. Look, most of the public has one heavyweight champion. If you go to the mall and you say, who's the heavyweight champion? I believe most of them are going to say Alexander Usyk. I think if you go to other guys who are, championship level, they're going to say, well, Alexander Usyk is the champion, right? You go to AJ, he would have to concede, Usyk beat him. Elite heavyweights would have to concede Usyk's the champion, right? So Usyk can pivot. There's going to be a crowd out there that's going to say, no, this man is the lineal. I don't need to hear about alphabet soup. I don't need to hear about alphabet titles and stuff like that. Right? They could announce a fight. Say it's Usyk, the lineal, against whoever. Usyk Fury, folks, that's going to get a lot of people. Right? Understand, for Fury, who's been the lineal, right? He has a stone in his shoe. He has an itch he needs to scratch. If Usyk were to say, hey, Tyson Fury, fight me next, Fury's response would likely be, when and where? Right? So I'm not buying Tyson Fury interviews. I think Fury has an agenda. Right? I'm hearing some 20-year-old who hasn't made it into the second half of a 12-round fight, who, hasn't run roughshod through, British heavyweight boxing. Right? Itauma hasn't fought AJ twice. He hasn't fought Daniel Dubois twice. He doesn't have the track record, right? That would have you say, oh my God, this 20-year-old might be the answer to the question of who is the successor. Right, folks? We haven't had all of that. We have a 20-year-old, and he's promising. He's promising. We have a 20-year-old who's beaten Marius Wack and Dillian White. Right? That's what we have right now. This isn't, a war on the heavyweight division. This isn't Sonny Liston wiping out so many guys that Floyd Patterson, who was told by President John F. Kennedy at the White House not to fight Sonny Liston, that Floyd Patterson has to fight him. Right? You look at Moses Itauma, you say, okay, he's promising. Folks, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he can beat many of the other heavyweights. The heavyweight division is deep. Right? I understand. Privately, Itauma's in with the best. I understand. Privately, many heavyweights believe he's one of the hardest punchers they've ever faced. Right? Lawrence Okole's on record as saying this guy is among the hardest hitters in the heavyweight division. Right? Maybe the talent's there. But call me a hater or whatever. They announce a Usyk Itauma fight. It's an easy bet for me. Right? Let me say too, southpaws have a hard time against other southpaws. It's not like they're familiar with the angles themselves. Right? You put Moses Itauma in with boxing PhD. Right? A guy who's been undisputed in more than one weight class, who, should be judged by the level of opposition that he's fought. Right, folks? He was in a tournament at cruiserweight. Look at the locations of Usyk's fights. He's fighting big name guys in their backyard. Right? Let's just say, southpaw against southpaw, I think Usyk would be more prepared than Itauma. Right, folks? Itauma's 20. He's not even old enough to have graduated from college. He's 20. This is the guy on the college team. Granted, he's world class. Right? But, let me say too, the problem with these arduous fights, these fights that make it into the second half, right, where you're looking at, the 7th round, the 8th round, the 9th round, is that many of these guys need to get a second win. You remember how brutal, and it's brutal, the second half of the AJ Vladimir Klitschko fight was. Folks, it's brutal. Think about the second half, 10-round fight, right? Understand, 10 rounds is four more than Itauma's ever gone. Think about the last 4 rounds of the fight that just took place. Ergovic Adelaide. Look at that 8th round. Realize that that 8th round starts at a place that's deeper into the fight than Itauma has ever been. Right, folks? Some guys find out they don't have the stamina to go 12 rounds before a crowd, right? Outside of some sparring session. Some guys find out they don't have the stamina. Other guys find out that they can't handle the aches and pains. Ergovic is there with a bloody eye. Right? You can imagine how that blood may have affected his ability to see. Right? Think about it. He's there in the 8th round. Adelaide's teeing off on his face. Right, folks? At the start of the round, let's say Ergovic has spent, let's say, 30% of his fuel tank, if not more. Right? He's making it through that round. There's a physical component, right? Blood in your eye, aches and pains. Boxers, they don't shake hands with you. Sore hands, right? Floyd Mayweather had sore hands for a big stretch of his career. Right? In the early rounds, that might not be a factor. Right? You hit a guy in the head enough times, round 8, round 9, your hands might be throbbing. Right? All I'm saying is Itauma's promising he's not ready for Usyk right now. Let's stop kidding ourselves. Usyk's one of the best movers in the game. You think Usyk's going to do what? Stand around in the pocket for Itauma to catch up with him in the first 3 rounds? So I don't care who's the next fighter to come out and say, oh, I think Itauma's going to clean out Usyk. Right? My point to you is, if that fighter's a heavyweight who might be a future opponent for either guy, right, Itauma or Usyk, that heavyweight may have a private agenda. Right? Could you imagine AJ coming out and saying, hey man, I think Itauma's going to clean out Usyk? Right, folks? Guys looking at possible paydays are going to say a lot of things. One of the things I learned about boxing is that you don't find out the truth for several years. Right? In the moment, Ray Leonard pretended that he earned the draw against Thomas Hearns in their rematch. Now we know Ray Leonard himself believed that he lost that match. You know, recently, Bob Arum has come out. Didn't say it at the time. Now he's openly saying that he thought that Oscar De La Hoya clearly won one of his matches against Shane Mosley. Right, folks? You don't get the truth for years in boxing. Right? So now it's 2025. Tyson Fury, here's a shocker, believes that the hot young British fighter is going to beat Alexander Usyk. Right, folks? Come on. Come on. Right? Fury's still in a place where he wants a fight. He wants a fight with Alexander Usyk. His statement might be at least partially motivated by self-interest. What you need to do is to look at the facts. Right? Itauma, no losses. Usyk, no losses. Itauma hasn't been by the 6th round. Usyk comes back in a fight where we can debate whether or not the punch was legal. But he gets off the canvas after a 5-minute wait. And he gets a later stoppage of Daniel Dubois. Right? He's there in a highly competitive fight that he might have been losing at the time. It's round 9. He's able to get a count given to Tyson Fury. In boxing, championship boxing, a lot happens after the 6th round. Itauma, to date, has no experience in a pro fight past the 6th round. You think he's going to beat a champion who has been undisputed in multiple weight classes, whose last fight was a multiple knockdown affair in a revenge match against Daniel Dubois? Think about how hard Dubois hits. How many times did AJ hit the canvas against Dubois? Right? Think about that. Right? Folks, that's the level of punching power that Usyk just faced. You think Usyk what? Is going to be looking across a 20-year-old Itauma and he's going to be what? Fainting? Usyk himself thinks highly of Itauma. Right? Usyk himself calls Itauma the future of the heavyweight division. Folks, that future might not be right now. Right? And of course, we have no idea. We have no idea how Itauma would do against, name the opponent, Filip Ergovic, guy who I think would give him a hard time. Zhili Zhang, right southpaw, knockout puncher, beat Joe Joyce. Right? Derek Chisora, Lawrence Okoli. Let me tell you, I've read many interviews of fighters where they say, oh, this guy's the truth. The guy's the truth until they're in the ring with the guy. Right? I think Itauma would have a hard time getting by Okoli's jab. This is not to suggest that everyone beats Itauma. Right? It is to suggest that we're in the deep end of the pool here. When we start saying, gee, how would Itauma do against Usyk? Right, folks, he's not ready. In the 80s, we thought Tyson was ready. Right? We thought Tyson was ready. And Tyson certainly was able to stop some guys early, wasn't he? But you noticed Bone Crusher Smith, Razor Ruddock, they hung around. They made it out of the first 3 rounds, didn't they? Right? We started noticing that the guy who we thought was so far ahead of everyone else wasn't that far ahead of everyone else. Right? Sadly, we never got the Riddick-Bowe Tyson fight. Both guys, by the way, were schoolmates of each other, even though they didn't know each other. Right? We didn't get the Brooklyn battle for heavyweight world supremacy. Right? Years later, we got the Evander Holyfield Mike Tyson fights. Right, folks? Holyfield was unafraid. We started to realize that, either Tyson had lost the advantage he had on Holyfield, or perhaps the perception at the time was a little bit off. People might remember Holyfield himself, like Usyk, came up from a lower weight class and had superb coordination like Usyk does. Right? So let's think it through. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. Tyson Fury, folks, he's a chess player in the ring. My point to you is he might be a chess player outside of the ring. Don't blindly follow anyone's opinion, mine or Tyson Fury's. Those are my thoughts. I look forward to yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. 20 is a college junior, right? 20 might be too young to know the sport well enough to deal with an Olympic gold medalist who was undisputed at cruiser, who's undisputed at heavyweight, who has won some of his biggest fights on the road, who has feasted on power punchers, right? Blessed puncher, AJ. Blessed puncher, Daniel Dubois. 4 fights. Folks, Usyk's already been there. Those are my thoughts. I look forward to yours. Thanks for stopping by.